It was just past 6 when my phone rang, cutting through the quiet of the early morning. I was still half asleep, my mind heavy with dreams, but something in the sound of that ring jolted me awake. I could tell by the area code it was from the hospital, and my stomach dropped before I even answered. "Hello." It was my mom's voice, tight, shaking. "It's your grandmother," she said, the words tripping over each other. "She passed away in her sleep. We need to make arrangements." I felt the room spin, the heat of panic rising in my chest. The world was suddenly smaller, quieter, as if the air had thickened, making it harder to breathe. I couldn't process what she was saying. My grandmother, my rock, my constant, was gone. "Okay, I'll take care of it," I managed, though the words felt hollow even to me. I hung up, and for a moment, I just stood there, the silence pressing down on me. My mind raced, overwhelmed with a million thoughts. But one thing cut through everything else: Cassie. I needed to tell her. I needed her to know, even though I wasn't sure what it meant anymore. I shot her a quick text. "Grandma passed. I have to start making arrangements." Her response came almost immediately, like she'd been waiting for a reason to text. "I'm so sorry, babe. What's the plan for the funeral?" Her words felt distant, detached, but I tried to push it out of my mind. I had a million things to think about. I just needed to focus. I called her right after. "I'm going to start calling the funeral home and making arrangements. I'll keep you updated." "Okay," she said, voice flat. "Well, I'm really looking forward to the trip I've got coming up. Don't forget to let me know about the funeral details. I'll make sure to take care of it when I get back." She didn't even offer to come. No offer of support, no concern beyond the logistics. Couldn't wrap my head around it. My grandmother was gone, and the woman I thought I would share everything with couldn't be bothered to show up for the most important moment of my life. The rest of the day was a blur. I called the funeral home, arranged for the service, signed papers I didn't want to sign. Every minute, the weight of the loss hit me harder, but Cassie's absence, and her cold response, felt like a betrayal that I couldn't shake. Later, I sent her the funeral details. I expected maybe some sympathy, something more than "I can't make it, the trip's non-refundable." "Understood" was all I could bring myself to reply. And just like that, the thought of us started to crack open. I didn't know where this relationship was headed anymore, but the road didn't feel familiar, and the person walking beside me felt more like a stranger than someone who shared my life. I sat down at the kitchen table, the will spread out in front of me like a map to a treasure I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. The words felt like they belonged to a different life, one where I wasn't staring at a pile of legalese and wondering how it could all go wrong. The inheritance wasn't a surprise. My grandmother had always said she wanted to leave something to me and Cassie, especially when we got married. A little extra cushion for starting our lives together. $40,000. That was the promise. But as I started reading the fine print, I realized something that hit me like a slap. The money wasn't just a gift. It was contingent on us being married. The lawyer had made that clear, but I hadn't fully understood it until now. It was in black and white. If you are not married when the estate is settled, the bequest will revert to the main estate. I ran my hand through my hair and reread it. Married. So much hinged on that. The ring, the vows, the promises we'd made to each other, the life I thought we were building. But sitting there, staring at that document, I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my chest. My grandmother had trusted me with this, had believed in us. And yet, Cassie hadn't even trusted me enough to show up for my grandmother's funeral. I picked up my phone and dialed the lawyer's number, trying to shake off the weight of the decision I had to make. "Mr. Reynolds," the lawyer answered, his voice all professionalism. "How can I help?" "I'm looking over the will. Just to confirm, if Cassie and I aren't married when this is settled, the money goes back to the estate, right?" "That's correct," he said, sounding like he was reading from a script. "The conditions of the bequest are clear. There's a marriage clause. You'll need to be legally married when the estate is finalized, or the funds are forfeited." I pressed my thumb into my temple, feeling the pressure there. "Okay, thanks." I hung up, feeling like I had just been handed a life raft that didn't really float. I glanced over at the text conversation with Cassie again, the one that had set the tone for everything. Her response was so damn cold. "I can't make it, the trip's non-refundable." That's all she said. Not even a "sorry for your loss" or "I'll be thinking of you." It was like the death of my grandmother wasn't even a blip on her radar. And I was supposed to marry her? I snapped a screenshot of our conversation and stared at it. The words burned. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second, but I didn't send it to anyone. Not yet. It was like I was trying to document my own unraveling, to keep track of the moment things started to splinter. I couldn't stop myself from thinking about it. The future. If I went through with marrying Cassie, knowing that the money was riding on it, what did that say about us? Was I really about to make this huge decision based on $40,000? Was she really the person I wanted to build my life with? Someone who could be so damn indifferent when it mattered most? I sat back in my chair, letting my phone fall onto the table, the weight of both my grandmother's death and Cassie's indifference pressing down on me. It was like I was drowning in it, and there was no one to throw me a lifeline. Everything felt impossible now. The money, the marriage, the relationship. Was it all just about what I could provide? About what we could gain, rather than who we were together? The more I thought about it, the more exhausted I became. It wasn't just the grief, it was her lack of empathy, the way she couldn't even pretend to care about something so fundamental. My head was spinning. I had to make a decision. But how was I supposed to decide when everything felt so broken already? I walked into the church, feeling like I was moving through a fog. The funeral service had started already, and the quiet murmur of voices, the low hum of sadness in the air, was suffocating. But what hit me first wasn't the grief. It was the emptiness beside me. Cassie wasn't there. The moment I stepped in, people started looking at me. They nodded in sympathy, offering half smiles, but it didn't take long for the questions to come. "Where's Cassie? Isn't she coming?" I could feel the pressure of their eyes, but I couldn't make sense of my answer. "She's on a trip," I muttered, the words tasting bitter. A few heads nodded like they understood, but I could see the confusion in their faces. And I saw the disappointment, too. The service dragged on. I tried to focus on the eulogies, on the beautiful words about my grandmother, the stories about how strong she was, how she never gave up on anyone, how she fought for the people she loved. But I couldn't stop thinking about Cassie's absence. Why wasn't she here? When the ceremony ended, I walked out of the church to the cemetery, my heart heavy in my chest. As I stood by the gravesite, a family friend, someone who'd known me since I was a kid, came up to me. Her eyes were red, and I could see the disappointment she was trying to hide behind a tight smile. "Where's Cassie?" she asked softly, her voice heavy with concern. "She couldn't make it," I said, trying to sound like I didn't care. She shook her head slowly, the frown deepening. "You know, if she can't show up for something like this, she won't be there for the important moments in life. You have to ask yourself if that's the kind of woman you want by your side." Her words cut through me like a blade. She wasn't wrong, and I hadn't been able to ignore it. I had been asking myself that question all day. Was this who I wanted to be with? Someone who didn't care enough to come to the funeral of someone who'd practically raised me? Someone who didn't see the importance of showing up, of being there, even when it was hard. I'd been fooling myself for a while, thinking I could overlook these things, that I could build a future with her despite it all. But now, with my grandmother 6 feet under and Cassie's absence like an open wound, the weight of it all crashed down. After the burial, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The drive home was silent, and when I walked into the house, the quiet felt deafening. I dropped my keys onto the kitchen counter and sat down, burying my face in my hands. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at it, already knowing who it was. It was Cassie. "How was the funeral?" she asked, her text popping up on the screen. I stared at it for a few seconds, the words burning into me. How was the funeral? She wasn't even here. She didn't care enough to be here. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I opened the next text. "What's the deal with the inheritance? Is it really true that we get $40K? A sick feeling spread through me. The fact that she was already thinking about the money, that she could be so indifferent to what I was going through, made me feel like I didn't even know who she was anymore. I sat there for a while, staring at the screen, trying to shake the nausea that twisted my gut. Then the next text came through like it was just part of the same casual conversation. By the way, I found this wedding venue I love. It's perfect, but it's a bit pricey. The words blurred together as my hands trembled, holding the phone, and I realized then that I wasn't just mourning my grandmother's death. I was mourning the loss of something I hadn't even realized was gone. I'd thought we were in this together, but now it felt like she was already plotting her next step toward her future, without any thought to what I was going through. The inheritance, the wedding, all of it. It was just another way for her to cash in, like she had no clue what loyalty or respect meant. I took a deep breath, my chest tight, and typed back the only thing I could manage. I'll let you know when I have time to talk about it. It was the most neutral response I could muster, and it was also the most heartbreaking. It was a few days after the funeral, and I was still raw. The house felt empty without the weight of her presence. I had been trying to focus on the details, on all the arrangements left to do after my grandmother's passing, but I couldn't shake the way Cassie's absence kept gnawing at me. Every time I thought about it, the anger would bubble up, then settle into a cold pit in my stomach. She was in the living room when I got home, sitting on the couch with a big smile on her face, her Coachella wristbands still bright and fresh against her tan. She looked so damn carefree, like nothing had happened. It hit me all over again, how completely out of touch she was with everything. "Hey," she said, her voice too chipper for the mood I was in. "Look what I got. It was amazing. Best weekend ever." She waved her wristbands like they were trophies, not even noticing how tight my jaw had gotten. I didn't want to hear about Coachella. I didn't want to hear about anything, not right now. Not when the memory of my grandmother's funeral and her absence was still burning in the back of my mind. I set my bag down on the counter, took a breath, and turned to face her. "Cassie," I said, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be, "we need to talk." She raised an eyebrow, still too upbeat. "About what? You didn't text me back about the venue. What's going on?" I didn't want to talk about the venue. Not now. Not when all I could think about was her not being at my grandmother's funeral. I had been letting it slide, letting it go because I didn't want to fight, but now I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Why weren't you there?" I said, the words coming out sharp and accusing, like I had to get them out before I choked on them. "Cassie, you weren't at the funeral. My grandmother passed away, and you couldn't be there." "What the hell?" Her face faltered for a second. Then she shrugged it off like it was no big deal. "I told you, the Coachella tickets were expensive. I couldn't waste them. You know how much I've been looking forward to that." She threw her hands up like I should understand. "Your grandmother would have understood. She wasn't even your real grandma. She'd be fine with it." I could feel my fists clenching at my sides. "Are you seriously saying that to me? My grandmother, who helped raise me, who was there when no one else was, and you think she would have understood? She's dead, Cassie, and you couldn't be bothered to show up. How could you not see how messed up that is?" She looked at me like I was overreacting, like my feelings weren't valid. Her face twisted into that familiar, defensive expression. "You're overthinking this. It was just a funeral. People die all the time. We can't just stop our lives for everything." I stared at her, disgust rising in my throat. This wasn't just about the funeral anymore. This was about everything. Her selfishness, her inability to empathize, her need to be the center of her own universe. I had been giving her the benefit of the doubt for so long, thinking maybe I was just being sensitive, maybe I was expecting too much. But now I saw it so clearly. I wasn't the one who was wrong. "I can't marry you, Cassie," I said, the words coming out with more finality than I'd planned. "I can't keep doing this. Not just because of the funeral, but because of everything. You can't even be there when it matters, and that's not someone I can build a life with." Her face went from confusion to anger in an instant. "What the hell are you talking about?" She stood up, her voice rising. "You're breaking up with me over a funeral? This is ridiculous." "I'm not breaking up with you, Cassie. I'm ending the engagement," I said, each word a little easier than the last. You're not part of the estate anymore. You're not getting any of it. That's not how I want to start my life with you. Not with your attitude, not with how you treat people when it's hard. You've made it clear what matters to you, and I'm done. Her face twisted with outrage. Are you serious? You're using that as an excuse? You're being manipulative. You're threatening me with money to get what you want. She took a step forward, like she was going to push me. You can't do this. I'm going to talk to a lawyer. I'll fight you for the inheritance. For everything. I stood there, unflinching, as she raged at me. Do what you need to do, but it's not happening. This is over. Her eyes flashed with fury, and for a second, I thought she might hit me. But then she just turned and stormed out of the room, muttering about how I'd regret this. I didn't feel any relief. I didn't feel anything but the deep, hollow ache of realizing I'd let someone who didn't give a damn about me or my family have so much of my time and energy. But I knew one thing for sure. This was the only way forward. It was over. The phone rang late that night, and when I saw the name on the screen, my stomach twisted. I already knew what it was about. Hello? What the hell do you think you're doing? My ex-fiancée's mom's voice crackled through, sharp and frantic. She sounded like she'd been pacing. You can't just cut her off like that. You're being unreasonable. I sighed, rubbing the bridge of my nose. I had already been through this in my head. I was done and I wasn't going back. I'm not being unreasonable. She wasn't there for my family when it mattered. She's not entitled to anything. There was a pause, then a heavy, disgusted breath on the other end. That money was meant for her. For both of you. You're throwing away your future together for nothing. She's heartbroken over this, and you're just being petty. You need to fix this now. Her words hit me like a slap, but they didn't stick. I had heard this argument before, too. It's meant for you too, it's your future, as if the money was the only thing that mattered in this mess. No, I said, keeping my voice steady. That money wasn't meant for someone who couldn't even show up for my grandmother's funeral. It wasn't meant for someone who can't show any decency. She showed me exactly who she is. I could practically hear her shaking her head, as if I were the one in the wrong here. You don't understand. She's been with you for so long. You're throwing it all away. Do you think this inheritance will fix everything? That you're going to be happy alone with all that money? You're ruining everything. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep the anger from bubbling over. I'm not ruining anything. I'm protecting myself from someone who clearly doesn't give a damn about me or my family. I'm done with this. Listen to me. Her voice wavered, then broke into something softer, more desperate. She's been crying for days. She loves you. She's hurt. And you're just going to cut her out over this? You owe her that money for everything you've been through together. You owe her that chance to start over. I felt my stomach churn, the guilt she was trying to twist around me making me nauseous. You don't get it. I don't owe her that. The inheritance was never about money. It was about family. And she made it clear she wasn't part of mine. Not when it mattered. Her silence was heavy. You're a fool then. You'll regret this. I didn't respond. Instead, I ended the call and threw my phone down onto the couch, the weight of it all pressing against my chest. I felt the tiniest bit of relief, like I had finally made a choice I wouldn't take back. But I knew the worst wasn't over. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, this time with a text. It was from my ex. You're going to regret this. You're hurting me for nothing. I didn't even hesitate. I blocked her number, just like that. Felt final, like a door slamming shut, locking behind me. But, of course, that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, I woke up to multiple missed calls. Her mother, her father, and a few others I didn't recognize. I ignored them, but they didn't stop. By noon, there was an email in my inbox from her father, demanding that I reconsider my decision about the inheritance. They were disappointed in me, disheartened by my actions. And apparently, my ex was emotionally fragile, and her parents believed it was my duty to support her. It didn't take long for the rumors to start, either. At work, I overheard a couple of colleagues talking, glancing at me quickly when they thought I wasn't paying attention. The whispers spread, and soon enough, people were telling me what my ex's family was saying behind my back. That I was greedy, manipulative, that I was using the inheritance to punish her. I didn't care about the rumors. I didn't care what they said. But it did make me feel sick to my stomach. They were doing exactly what I'd expected, using every trick to get what they wanted, including painting me as the villain. I thought about calling my lawyer just to make sure everything was airtight, but honestly, I didn't need to. I had already made up my mind. When her mom called again that afternoon, I didn't even listen. I hit block without a second thought. I could feel the weight of the past few days finally starting to lift, but with it came something else. A sinking, nagging feeling that this wasn't going to end easily. I knew she wouldn't just let go of the money, and her family certainly wouldn't. But for the first time in a while, I felt like I'd done the right thing. I felt like I was finally free. It was late afternoon when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. My stomach twisted before I even picked it up. I had already been expecting this, but hearing it confirmed made my chest tighten. "Hello," I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral, but I couldn't quite hide the irritation. "Is this Mr. Matthews?" The voice on the other end was sharp, cold, professional. "This is Joseph Reynolds. I'm calling from Lawrence and Company. I'm representing Ms. Harper, and I'd like to discuss a matter regarding the inheritance from your grandmother's estate." I leaned back against the couch, my heart picking up speed. "Yeah, I figured you'd be calling," I muttered. "We've been informed that you've excluded Ms. Harper from the bequest intended for you and your fiancée," Reynolds continued, as if he was reading from a script. "She has a claim on the inheritance, based on your long-standing relationship and the explicit understanding that the money would be passed to both of you upon marriage. You've effectively reneged on a promise. My client intends to pursue legal action unless this is resolved promptly." I gripped the phone tighter, the words hitting me like a punch. "Let me make this clear, Mr. Reynolds," I said, my voice firm now, cutting through the calm. "The inheritance was never meant for someone who disrespects my family. It was conditional on us being married. Since we're not married, my ex has no claim to it, legally or otherwise." I could hear the lawyer's quiet exhale, like he was gathering himself for a counterattack. "That's where you're mistaken, Mr. Matthews. The inheritance was intended for both you and your fiancée, and the long-standing nature of your relationship means she's entitled to it. You've broken off the engagement, but that does not negate the terms of the bequest. She's still entitled as far as we're concerned." I held my ground, my pulse steady. "I'm not mistaken. The will explicitly states that the bequest is contingent on marriage. We're not married, so that money is not hers." A brief silence followed, then he cleared his throat. "We will be filing a formal petition if you continue to refuse the inheritance to my client. This could escalate very quickly." I could feel my anger rising, but I forced myself to stay calm, to not let them get under my skin. "Go ahead and file. I'm not backing down. I've got the will right here. It's clear. No marriage, no money." Reynolds sighed, as if he realized there was no point in arguing any further. "Very well. We'll be in touch." I hung up, still holding the phone in my hand, the weight of the conversation lingering in the air. I knew this was far from over. It wasn't just about the money, it was about control. They were trying to manipulate me into backing down, into giving up the inheritance without a fight. But I wasn't going to fold. I texted my lawyer immediately, giving him the details. A few minutes later, I got a call from him. "Hey, I heard. You're doing the right thing. Just make sure you keep everything documented. Keep records of any further communication, especially anything from her or her family. I'll get in touch with the estate lawyer and we'll draft an official exclusion clause. If they want to escalate this, they're welcome to. We'll make sure this goes through the proper channels." I felt a small sense of relief at hearing that. It wasn't the kind of relief you get when a problem is solved. It was more like the moment you realize that, while the fight isn't over, at least you've got someone in your corner who's on your side. My lawyer was on it. The estate lawyer was on it. And I was no longer alone in this. "Thanks," I said, my voice steady. "Let me know what I need to do." "Will do," he replied, then hung up. The rest of the night passed in a haze of texts and emails. The estate lawyer confirmed he'd already started drafting the exclusion clause, which would officially block my ex from any claim to the inheritance. My stomach twisted again, but this time it wasn't with guilt. It was with the heavy realization that this whole mess wasn't going to be over quickly. Her family wouldn't let it go, and I was going to have to fight for what was mine. But there was something else, too. I felt a weird sense of empowerment, like I had finally found my spine. I wasn't letting anyone take advantage of me anymore. I wasn't going to be manipulated. Still, as the night wore on, I knew deep down this was just the beginning. I could feel it in my gut. Things were about to get a whole lot messier. It was late, and I had just settled in for the night when I heard the knock at the door. The sound made my heart skip, even though I knew exactly who it was. I stood there for a second, frozen. It had been a few days since the lawyer's call, since blocking her, since I'd ended it all. But she wasn't done. I opened the door and there she stood. Her hair was messier than usual, her face flushed, like she'd been running. She didn't wait for me to say anything before she pushed her way inside, her eyes wide and desperate. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "About the inheritance." I crossed my arms, standing in the doorway, blocking her from walking any further. "No, we don't. You've got no claim to it." She blinked rapidly, like she was holding back tears, but I could see the anger simmering underneath, the same anger she always had when she didn't get her way. "I deserve that money," she said, her voice rising. "It's mine, it's ours. You can't just take it all for yourself. You're being vindictive and cruel." I shook my head, keeping my voice level. "It's not yours. Not anymore. You forfeited any right to it when you chose not to show up for my grandmother's funeral. That was the deal, and you broke it." Her face contorted with a mix of disbelief and frustration, and she took a step forward. "You're punishing me for something so small. You're punishing me for nothing. I've been there for you. I've supported you. This inheritance was ours, and you're throwing it away because of one thing. One mistake." I met her eyes, finally allowing the frustration I'd been holding back to show. "It wasn't one mistake, Cassie. It was a pattern. You couldn't even show up when my family needed you. When I needed you, you weren't there, and you don't get to pretend it doesn't matter." She took a sharp breath, her voice cracking as she stepped closer, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for all of it. But I love you. I want to fix this. We can go to therapy, we can do whatever it takes. Please don't let this ruin us. Don't let me lose everything over nothing." I looked at her, and for a moment, I almost felt pity. But then I remembered everything. The way she had dismissed my family, the way she had shrugged off something so significant in my life like it didn't matter. She didn't get to turn this around with empty promises. But she wasn't done. She dropped her head, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. Then, in a voice that was so soft, I almost didn't catch it, she said, "I'm pregnant, Ryan. You need to marry me. For the sake of the baby. For the sake of our family. You can't just walk away from this. You can't just throw everything away." The words hit me like a cold slap to the face. I felt a sick, heavy weight drop into my stomach. I stared at her, trying to read her, trying to make sense of the lie I was pretty sure I was hearing. "You're lying?" I said quietly, but I could hear the anger creeping into my voice. "You're manipulating me, and it's not going to work. You know damn well that's not true." Her eyes flickered, the desperation flashing across her face. She took a step closer, her hands reaching out toward me, but I took a step back. "It's not a lie," she said, her voice quivering. "You can't do this. You can't just walk away. Our baby needs you." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. "You think I'm going to buy this? After everything? You're trying to pull me back in, trying to trap me with guilt? But I see right through it. I'm not marrying you because of a lie. And I'm certainly not doing it to fix anything." She took another step toward me, her face flushed with rage now, but I didn't move. "This is just another manipulation, Cassie. This isn't about the baby. It's about you not getting your way. And I'm not doing it. You're not going to use this to force me into a decision I've already made." She started to tremble, her face twisted with hurt and frustration. "I need you. I'm asking you, please. Don't make me do this alone." The words hit me, but they didn't move me. She wasn't asking me to fix anything. She was asking me to let her off the hook for everything she'd done, everything she'd failed to do. "You need to leave," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I've made my decision. I'm not marrying you. Not now, not ever. And you're not getting the inheritance. It's over." I saw the hurt flash across her face, but I wasn't going to change my mind. "Leave. Now," I said, my voice hardening. "If you don't, I'll call the police." For a second, she just stood there, her body trembling, eyes wide with shock. Then, slowly, she backed toward the door, her breath shallow. "Fine," she muttered, her voice raw with anger and humiliation. "I'll leave, but don't think this is over. You'll regret this." I didn't respond. I just watched her leave, the door closing quietly behind her. I stood there for a moment, still hearing her words echoing in my head. It wasn't over. She was right about that. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally done. I had made the decision, and I wasn't looking back. I had just sat down at my desk, the quiet buzz of the office around me, when the door to the lobby swung open with a crash. I looked up, half expecting it to be another colleague or some delivery guy, but when I saw her, Cassie's mom, standing there, I froze. Her eyes were wide with rage, and her posture was like a storm about to break. She marched through the lobby, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, and I could feel all eyes on us. I stood up immediately, but I didn't move toward her. "Ryan Matthews," she yelled across the room, her voice high and full of venom. "You listen to me right now." I winced at the attention it drew, but I wasn't about to back down. I had a full day of work ahead, and this wasn't the time for drama. "What are you doing here, Nancy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though the tension in my chest was rising fast. "I'm here to demand answers," she snapped, ignoring my question. "You've ruined my daughter's life. You're punishing her for no reason. You're being heartless, Ryan. Absolutely heartless." A few heads turned. I could feel the eyes of my coworkers on us. The last thing I needed was an audience, but Nancy didn't seem to care. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said, my voice calm, careful. "Your daughter disrespected my family. She wasn't there when it mattered. That's why she doesn't get anything. No matter what you believe, the inheritance is not hers." Her face went red. I could see the frustration boiling over, and I knew what was coming next. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to throw away everything just because she made a mistake. You're making her suffer for something that's nothing." I felt the urge to walk away, to escape the escalating scene, but I couldn't. I wasn't going to back down, not now. She didn't make a mistake. She chose not to be there. That was her choice. And she's made a lot of other choices too. She's not entitled to anything, not from me or from my family. "You don't deserve that money," she screamed, her voice shaking with rage. "You're selfish. You're ruining her life. She loves you, and you're just throwing it all away because of your pride." A few of my coworkers were standing in the doorway, watching, not sure if they should step in. I could feel their eyes on me, and I could feel the heat of embarrassment creeping up my neck, but I refused to look away from her. "I'm not ruining her life," I said, keeping my voice steady, though inside, I was losing patience. "She did that all on her own. You raised her to believe she could treat people however she wanted. And now you're here, trying to guilt-trip me into giving her something she hasn't earned. That inheritance was for us, for me and my wife-to-be, not for someone who can't show up when it matters." Her face twisted with fury. She opened her mouth to scream again, but I didn't let her. "I'm done with this," I said. "You need to leave. Now." Her face went white with shock for just a moment, but the anger quickly returned, this time boiling over. She stepped toward me, her hands shaking. "You think this is over? You think you're going to get away with this? I'll make sure the whole town knows what you did. You're a heartless bastard, Ryan Matthews. Before I could respond, two security guards stepped up beside her, firm but calm. One of them, a guy named Mike, placed a hand on her elbow. "Ma'am, you'll need to leave the premises." Nancy jerked her arm away from him. "You can't just throw me out. I'm here to talk to him. He can't treat my daughter like this." Mike didn't flinch. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disturbing the business." Nancy sputtered, looking at me one last time, her face a mix of rage and desperation. "You'll regret this, Ryan. You'll see." She was still yelling as she was escorted out of the building, her voice trailing off into the hallway. I stood there, a little stunned by how far she was willing to go, how completely out of control she had become. But I wasn't shaken. I didn't feel anything but calm, even as the whole lobby fell silent again. A moment later, my boss, Brian, walked up to me. He had watched the whole thing unfold from his office across the hall. "I can't believe that just happened," he said, shaking his head. "I've never seen someone act like that, especially not in here. Are you okay?" I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment still settle over me, but I managed a small smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. You handled it well," Brian said. "But, just so you know, if she or anyone else from that family pulls something like that again, we'll be calling the cops." That was way out of line. I swallowed, the adrenaline from the confrontation still pumping through me. "Thanks. I appreciate it. I'll make sure HR knows about this too. You don't need to deal with that kind of thing at work. This whole situation is crazy." I could only nod. "Yeah, I know." The lobby was quiet again, and I felt the weight of the last few days crashing down on me. But hearing Brian's support, seeing how the whole office had watched the scene unfold and how no one was on her side, made me feel like maybe I was doing the right thing. I had no idea how far they were willing to go, how much they were going to escalate this. But what I knew for sure was that I had drawn the line, and I wasn't crossing it. I sat at the table in the lawyer's office, my mother on one side and my uncle on the other. The tension in the air felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the moment that would settle everything. My ex-fiancée and her parents walked in, trying their best to appear calm, but there was no hiding the discomfort in their movements. They couldn't even meet my eyes. Cassie's mother gave a tight smile, and her father just looked around the room, pretending like he wasn't already bracing for a fight. They took their seats, and for a moment there was silence. I could hear the soft rustle of papers as the attorney prepared to read the will. My stomach twisted. I had no idea what to expect, but a small part of me was already anticipating the look on Cassie's face when she heard what was coming. The attorney cleared his throat and began reading. His voice was steady and formal, like he had done this 1,000 times. I tried to focus on the words, but my mind kept drifting. The sound of my grandmother's name, the way it used to feel hearing it, brought a lump to my throat. She was still with me in some way, guiding me through this mess. Finally, the lawyer reached the section about the inheritance. As per the wishes of the decedent, the bequest of $40,000 is intended for Ryan Matthews and his fiancée, provided they are legally married at the time of distribution. He paused, his eyes flicking to me briefly before continuing. However, due to the absence of the fiancé at the funeral, a condition stated within the will is hereby invoked, resulting in the exclusion of Ms. Harper from any claim to the inheritance. I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. Not because of the money, it was never about that, but because it felt like a confirmation of the decision I had made. I had done the right thing. Cassie's face went pale. I saw the way her hands trembled as she looked at her parents, as if waiting for them to say something, to do something. But nothing came. The room was quiet, save for the attorney's voice, which now sounded distant, like it was coming from another world. Cassie opened her mouth to speak, her voice shaking. But we were going to get married. We were going to, I swear. I should still get it." The lawyer didn't even look up as he responded, his voice cold and legal. "I'm afraid the conditions are clear, Ms. Harper. Your absence at the funeral disqualifies you from any claim to the estate. The bequest was conditional upon you being present, and that condition was not met." Her face fell completely, the fight draining out of her. Her mother shot her a look, but there was no argument left. There was no coming back from this. Cassie stood up, and for the first time I saw her break. Her eyes filled with tears, her hands pressed against her chest as if to hold herself together. "You can't do this," she whispered, but the words came out hollow. "You just can't." Her father stood as well, putting a hand on her shoulder, but even he knew it was over. Without a word, they turned and walked out of the room, heads down, their footsteps echoing as they left in silence. I stayed seated, my hands resting on the table, but my mind was a little lighter than it had been in days. The money was already in my bank account, but it wasn't about that. It was about the feeling of finality, of closure. The attorney finished his paperwork, then glanced up at me, his face softening slightly. "Your grandmother's wishes are legally sound. It's unfortunate it had to come to this, but it's over now." I nodded, a small but real sense of relief flooding over me. "Thank you." My uncle reached over and gave my shoulder a brief squeeze. My mother, who had been quietly watching the entire exchange, finally spoke up, her voice soft but steady. "I'm proud of you, Ryan. You did the right thing." I glanced at her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "It wasn't easy." "I know," she said, "but it was necessary. For you. For your future." The lawyer handed me the official documents, and I slid them into my jacket pocket. But as I stood up and walked out of the office, I didn't feel the weight of the inheritance or the legal victory. What I felt was the weight of the lessons my grandmother had taught me, the importance of loyalty, of respect, of family. And as I stepped into the afternoon sun, I realized that, for the first time in a long time, I was moving forward. It wasn't just the money or the decision to end things with Cassie. It was something deeper. I had learned how to protect myself, to make the tough decisions that would keep my values intact. And that was worth more than any inheritance. For the first time in a long time, I felt free.